Those Days with the Monsters, Part 40. Kirrel watched from a viewport as what looked like a massive collection of metallic garbage was carefully guided into one of the derelict's docking bays. The shuttles, dwarfed by the mass they guided, moved almost as if alive, adjusting and readjusting the metal to keep it all together. Kirrel was pretty sure he'd been lied to.
Cumin. Happy.
He went with the Galactic Standard translation, refusing to embarrass himself with the hissing sound. He was stronger and better now. He had beaten Smee a total of 3 times over 8 sessions of sparring. He was not going to make a fool of himself over a measly H sound.
Who is piloting those shuttles?
Happy bared his teeth. Told you before, Squishy. They're UAVs. I guess USVs since it's space, not atmosphere. If anyone's piloting them, it's me. He clicked away at a board, whistling some melody through his teeth. Kirrel found Happy whistling that melody more and more. Happy had told him it was something called Yankee Doodle, but Kirrel had no idea what either word meant. Neither did his translator. It suggested that doodle might have something to do with a child's idle scrawl on a wall with a writing instrument, but that was far-fetched at best.
Those are clearly not being piloted from this station.
Kirrel watched the shuttles flitting around, performing a delicate process without an error.
You can't control that many at once. Someone has to be piloting them.
Most of it's subroutine, some of it's bashful. A lot of it's me, though. A flicker of red popped up in front of Happy. He tapped at the buttons in front of him, and it soon resolved. The perspective in front of him switching suddenly. Outside, a glittering silver shuttle swooped to the side, deftly corralling a stray bit of metal that looked oddly like the large gun Bashful had tried to take from the Tizik's strike ship. It was absurd for that to be the same gun. The ship had detonated. It was scrap, and so was the gun, so...
Is that a strike ship gun?
Kirrel found himself whispering as the shuttle shepherded the chunk of metal back to all the others. Which one? This? The shuttle deftly moved the gun away from the main cluster of metal, circling it a few times. Yeah, from a collection ship near Till, I think. Figured they didn't deserve to have them.
Till?
Kirrel's frills flared a bit, red and orange running through them.
Don't tell me there are more farm planets.
Lots of planets in Tizik space. How many of them are farms? Had to know. Happy tapped at his little buttons, and the slim Cumin shuttle guided the Tizik's gun back into the general mass of metal. Don't think they could feed their whole army without a lot of them, though. Makes the blood boil. That was an extremely alarming metaphor. At least Kirrel hoped it was a metaphor. Could Cumans survive their blood boiling? It would explain why they were so nonchalant about volcanism and fires. Eager to distract himself, Kirrel focused on a different question that had been bothering him.
If we're so worried about staying quiet, so much that I can't report, if those really aren't being piloted by Cumans, isn't it noisy?
How do you mean? Happy was still clicking away.
The signals, aren't they obvious?
Happy bared his teeth. Thought about that. Grumpy handled it. Apparently they use a receiver that can't pick up long wave.
What's long wave?
The 2 components made sense, but the term itself hadn't been included in the Cuman's lexicon apparently. The 2 definitions were overlapping again. Kirrel's frills pulsed a slight orange along the spines from his annoyance. Just radio waves, but really long wavelengths. Up to a mile, I think. Tiziks can't see 'em, so we used 'em. Don't think your general can pick 'em up either, and can't risk a leak anyway. Sorry about that. Sleepy says you liked talking to that general. Kirrel's frills flushed purple. He wanted to explain that it wasn't something he just liked. It was a great honour. It was a living legend. But somehow he didn't. Instead, his mind shifted to another question the other Cumans refused to answer. If he was right, Happy might be the only one willing to explain.
What's the thing you used on Kazurkan? The glass coffin, you said?
Ah. Happy rubbed his forehead. The screen flashed red for a moment and a shuttle bumped into the metal. A sharp beeping sounded, and Happy quickly tapped at the keys until it disappeared. The shuttle lined up with the rest of the metal to be guided in, and a new shuttle came out to replace it. Kirrel wondered if the shuttle had been damaged. What had distracted the Cuman piloting it so much? But Happy was still talking. I don't want to explain this one. You'll find out eventually though. Might as well be me that says it. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Remember how we said we mined the waters around the planet?
I think so. The translator said that it was a military term for leaving explosives for the enemy to run into.
Kirrel wasn't sure the translator was accurate, but it was the best he had to go on. From the pure transliteration he'd been provided, he would have assumed it meant breaking ice from comets for Cuman use. Yep, comes from old naval combat. Used to put bombs in the ocean so ships couldn't see them, and would get blown up.
Unexploded? You didn't even bomb the ocean, you just left bombs in it?
That seemed silly and ineffective, or dangerous. Kirrel wasn't sure which. Pretty much. Wasn't quite an explosive we left round Kazurkan though. More like a crop dusting of tiny nodes. Happy bared his teeth as the last shuttle entered the docking bay, and he closed the doors. Just kinda sat there waiting for us to turn them on. And then we jumped in, turned them on, and jumped out again. Piece of cake.
That makes sense, but what was it?
Kirrel was trying very, very hard not to think about that beautiful, shimmering cloud. The captain had said it was more dangerous than looking at normal jump. Kinda. The nodes, they kinda make jump unstable. All these little cracks and gaps opening and closing, see? Can't leave in jump because the gaps send parts of your ship into normal space. Can't leave in normal space because the gaps send bits of your ship into jump. Puts holes right through any ship in the field, and keeps putting holes in them until you get the ship out of range. A giant net of unstable space over the whole planet. It'll stay up until we turn them off, or the unstable space breaks the nodes. Most ships were in the net, I think. Those are probably dead. Ones that weren't are stuck. Ones that weren't are stuck unless they want to go through it, and I don't think they wanna. Kirrel shivered.
Is that why it's risky to look at?
Happy's hum sounded cheerful. Jump's dangerous enough. Know what happens if you look at a whole cloud of gaps in the middle of jump? Theoretically nothing because we were far away, but didn't want to take chances. Kirrel sat quietly, thinking, as a rattling clang announced that the derelict's docking bay had closed. The glass coffin, the way Happy had described it, didn't sound too dangerous, and it hadn't looked dangerous. But Happy expected that most of the fleet around Kazurkan had been destroyed by it. How could the Cumans treat the glass coffin so casually when they were so serious about iron shoes? And even more so, how could one little ship barely enough to be a space freighter, do so much damage and carry so much destructive weaponry? After a moment, Kirrel heard footsteps behind him. He knew that pattern of sound.
Hello, Smee.
Hey, Squishy. Lex says it's time again. Kirrel groaned and turned away from the viewport. He might not need all this fighting, really, now that he knew what glass coffin was. It seemed like the safest place in the universe might just be on this ship. Read by a good bean.